So it is my greatest pleasure to extend greetings
Just a
to
minute,
all the
please.
participants here.
Just a minute, please.
Okay, thank you.
Karma, we are going only third.
No.
Let's
Start the 8th session of South Asian Online Literary Conference organized by Sahitya Academy in collaboration with FOSWAL, Foundation of SAARC Writers and Literatures. In this session, there will be interview and conversation. Participants are Mariam Tasannum Wahid in conversation with Ibrahim Wahid from Maldives, Kanchana Priyankanta in conversation with Sunil Vijay Srivardhana from Sri Lanka, and Karma Cheki in conversation with Rinjan from Bhutan. I warmly welcome all of you, and I request Mariam ji and Ibrahim ji to introduce themselves and start conversation, please.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all. My name is Mariam Tasannum Wahid, and I'm grateful to everybody at the Foundation of SAARC Writers and Literature and Sahitya Academy for giving me this opportunity to participate in this edition of the South Asian Online Literary Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, watching this session live on YouTube, respected guests taking part in this session, as you know, Mr. Wahid has been attending FOSWAL events for about 14 years now, and he's a writer, poet, and scholar of Maldivian and international repute. He's the recipient of the Sahitya Academy Munshi Premchand Award in 2018, and the recipient of the...
Actually, 2008.
Oh, sorry, it's 2008, and the SAARC Literary Award in 2011, and also the Maldives prestigious National Award of Honor for service to the Divahi language and literature in 2020. Welcome, Mr. Wahid.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, namaskar, ashvilek, Aibon, everybody who is here. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. And I can see Praveen's name here. I hope Maji is coming on. If she does, that will be a double honor. So thank you for everybody participating. I think we have 15 minutes in which to conduct an interview. I'll leave the floor to you, actually. Go ahead.
Well, this conference is held with the blessings of Sahitya Academy and the Foundation of SAARC Writers and Literature. Why are these two organizations important to you as a writer and as a poet?
Okay. Now, let me put it this way. See, I have been doing much writing in the Maldives after I came back from Beirut. I spent the latter years of my teenage and my early 20s in a little town called Beirut in Lebanon. Little town. Anyway, so I came back to the Maldives and I started writing for almost all the then papers in the country, newspapers, articles, short stories, sometimes songs and poems and social commentary. I joined Television Maldives. As a freelancer. I did television presentations, hosted programs, and somewhere along the line, I even contributed to the first ever commercial movie in this country. Now, all without formal recognition, and even getting rejected, very often for political nonconformity. Despite the fact that say about 5 to 6 years into my service in this country, I was in rather senior government posts. Even with that, even when concerned folks nominated me for various awards, always rejected for nonconformity, I guess. This was where Sahitya Academy came. Amazing. And with it, the Munshi Premchand Fellowship Award, that was 2008. And I owe a lot to the then High Commissioner of India to the Maldives, His Excellency Shri Naneshwar Mule. A true gentleman in every single way, himself a writer and a literateur. A man I will always say pranam to. Amazing gentleman. And Sahitya Academy, thank you so much. And it's beautiful that I joined an event co-hosted by you. So that's where Sahitya Academy came on. I launched into recognized literary career with Sahitya Akademi, actually. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And then, of course, all political power, all the rejection aside, FOSWAL. Who else? But Padma Shri Srimati Ajit Kaurji. I don't call her that. I call her my Maji. I've been to her house. She has fed me with her own hands, physically, literally. And she has also fed me. She has inspired me. Both herself and her daughter, I call her Didi, Arpanaji. And we go back a long way. So that's why these two organizations are important. They will never, ever cease being important to me. So once again, even at this platform, I must say this, even if it's an answer to a question, Sahitya Akademi, Maji, I'm yours. Thank you.
I've been wondering, why do you write mostly in the English language, especially when last year you were awarded the most prestigious Maldivian National Award of Honor for services rendered to the Divehi language and its literature?
Home is always home, and Divehi is my own mother tongue. It's an old Sanskrit-based language, so it doesn't take us too far from home, even in India. There was a time when I didn't write in Divehi, but then I've always written. There was a brief hiatus, 2 years, but I soon corrected that. And the Maldives is a country with very small power distance, and the politics in there always affects even the ordinary man, wherever you are. Currently, actually, even now I do write. There's a paper called Adives, and I have a personal column on it, and I write in the Divehi language. But why do I write in English? You see, I write in English because the outlets I have for my writings in English are more, including internet platforms, and I have a wide readership that way. I get published globally because I write in English, right? By the way, if anyone here is interested in a novel from the Maldives, especially in the print media, talk to me, okay? I'm your man, because right now I'm writing one.
As a follow-up question, may I ask for your opinion on the foothold that Asian literature has gained in the Western world?
Do you really want to start me off on that? Okay, now this is an area I'm very, very passionate about it, and you know it. Let me help you slide everybody else into that arena. And I want to take you in from basically I'm an academic. That's by training, that's what I am. So let me kind of use an academic angle on it and slide into it. What happens? Take, for example, if you want to write a master's degree thesis on any subject, where am I going with this? You see, even in most Asian universities in the world, even the oldest ones, take JNU, for example, you have to do your literature review, which is one way of not only praising mostly Western professors, these are the guys that get published, right? But who profess to accept their ways of thinking, their world vision, their way of dividing and subdividing everything into artificial categories, the genres they formulate, and expect others to accept, or else. I mean, talk to Dr. Shashi Tharoor about this. He will tell you. This is where I'm coming from. You see, of course, there is a genre called Asian literature, but accepted, published, commended, or even given awards as long as you conform to and accept a certain set of norms that is alien to our culture. So these guys, they set, this is this genre, this is that genre. Master's thesis, you have to quote all the, guys with the funny English names. Where do our guys come from? I mean, this is not something that started yesterday. Take Alif Layla, the Arab masterpiece, the Alif Layla wa Layla. Heard of that? Nobody has. It's a socio-political, almost commentary by an Arab writer. But this thing gets pedestrianized, made into a boudoir narrative as the Arabian Nights. Now we know it. Aladdin becomes Aladdin, with a blue genie to match in the cartoon series, right? I wonder, let's take Adi Shankaracharya, the Nirvana Shatakam. I wonder how long that would remain safe and how this will be bowdlerized into translation into English or into a Western scenario. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. Try that. I mean, I'm sure they would make absolute nonsense out of that. The meaning of Shivoham itself will get lost. But that's what get published. But the beauty of that, in the Ravana Shataka, I mean, that will be totally changed, like Harirama got changed. Like even meditation and yoga got changed. So I hesitate to mention, the name of a certain foreigner in this country. He had made an absolute farce of some of the best Maldivian folk tales ever written, but he got published simply because they were supposedly collected for the first time and then written down by a man from the West, namely Spain. Of course, he never collected it for the first time. We've had collections for a long time. So I asked myself a question: have we gained a foothold in the Western world, or do some folks have a stranglehold on us? For me, a better world would be one in which we put ourselves together in more ways than one. Yesterday, at the inaugural, my friend, Professor Keshab Sigdel, he mentioned an idea. Let's do this immediately, no delays. Sahitya Akademi comes in with a brilliantly positive response. I was electrified. Thank you, Sahitya, again, for supporting Dr. Keshab yesterday. That was beautiful. I'm right behind him, totally in support. That's what I mean. So Asian literature, Western foothold, no, it's an image. No, we have to gain our foothold in another way. We have to come through our culture. We have to make ourselves better understood. Not Kipling's, what's that Jungle Book? No, not that, not at all.
And yet you would continue to write in English language.
Of course I would. Of course I would. The English language is not someone else's property. That, like, for example, that I borrow with humility. Listen to me. I'm talking like a native. I mean, that's not blowing my own trumpet. Okay? The English language is it's my property. I use it as I think fit. Nobody can tell me how I should use it. That is English. Okay? That's my language. That's why I use it. It's the total set of carpenter's tools I have in my house. I build my furniture with it. No Englishman tells me how to do it. By the way, I speak 12 foreign languages and I own them.
Mr. Wahid, during the recently eased COVID-19 lockdown in the Maldives, you placed 2 versions of your full-length novel, Ahlam, on Amazon, one in English and one in Divahi as well. Any more novels or novellas or other works in the pipeline?
Of course, I did mention it just now. I was actually looking forward to formally releasing the English version of one of my short story collections during this very festival, but that'll have to wait. And Maji tells me that we might have actually a face-to-face one next year. So I think I'll have to wait for that. But I'm almost also finished with this full length, that's a 50,000 word novel. And this is basically about a fisherman's son, Maldivian scenario, discovering various facets of his inner Maldivian self when he's kind of unwittingly released into a so-called modern world. I hope to look for publishers soon. Let's hope. Wish me luck, guys.
Wish you all the luck.
Thank you.
Any advice for the budding writers, especially in the English language?
Yes, I do. I'm a strong supporter of young writers in any language, but especially English, because that's where we can get together, all of us. And that is, first of all, write. And again, write. Are likho bhai, right? Have no fear and write. And keep the following in mind. In our part of the world, when people of different languages and dialects have to develop a lingua franca of sorts, they come up with lingua francas. I'll give you a good example. One is Urdu, which today is a matter of pride in its polished fluency and tehzeeb, which you have heard of. You've heard of the Lucknowi Andaz, for example. And Professor Akhtar al-Wasi, an old friend of mine, he spoke yesterday at the inaugural, and that was Urdu. Kya baat hai, So, and that is what happens when we, in our part of the world, develop a lingua franca. At least Urdu is this beautiful language where, you can say things like, not how are you? No, mizaje gharame. with the answer being dua hai aapki. I mean, where do you get this culture, this civilization? That's Urdu on one side. That's us. That's Asia. That's Sanskrit, right? Remember Khadi Boli? This is how it started, Urdu. Braj Bhasha. That is where we're coming from. Oh yes, Sanskrit, the mother of even my own native mother tongue, Vivek. And I'm so gratified that in India there's a resurgence of interest in Sanskrit. It's there in the Maldives as well. Sahitya Akademi, take note of this. This is an area we need to explore together. And this is for writers. Let's go into this. Because, let me give you a little bit of something to contrast it with. In another part of the world, I will not name the place, where English language was also thrust upon the people for use as a lingua franca, a prince still remains him wampela picanini belonged the queen. Oh my God. Him wampela picanini belonged the queen. That's how they define a prince. This language is called Tokpise. And this is how it is done even on their national television in their country. Their law is written in Tokpise. They could not come up with an Urdu. They could not come up with that Tehzeeb, Andaz, Lisan. They couldn't do that. That is because there was no culture backing it up. There was no history backing it up. We are so fortunate we have that. Keep that in mind, writers. And I can write an entire book on this, and I can go on well past my 15-minute limit. Let us rejoice that we belong to this part of the world, where we have a very different, yet unifying, how would I define it? Sanskriti. A different sapafat, as we call it. Right? And right, not to a culture, but from a culture. That's the advice I would give to young writers. If you can take it from me, I mean, I come from a very small country, an expensive one, like Maji says, but very small country. Chota aadmi hu main, chode muh chode baat, but that's how it works.
बहुत ही खूबसूरत बातचीत और वहीद साहब ने जैसा कि कहा और आती है उर्दू ज़बान आते आते और क्या खूबसूरत तरीके से आपने सारी भाषाओं को जिस तरह से संस्कृति और से जोड़ते हुए कि क्योंकि ये सारी भाषाएं अपनी संस्कृति का स्वर हैं जैसे आपने संस्कृत के बारे में कहा वेरी नाइस बहुत शुक्रिया थैंक यू इब्राहिम वहीद जी एंड we respect your love for Sahitya Akademi and FOSWAL and thank you Mariam Tasanum ji for your nice and interesting conversation. Thank you very much. Now I request Kanchana Priyankanta ji in conversation with Sunil Vijay Srivardhana ji. Please start your conversation, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Hemingway once said, a man can be destroyed, but not defeated. Our beloved Margie, Ajit Kaur is a good inspirational example to prove it right. Despite of the obstacles that crossed her path, she never fails to keep the FOSWAL family connected. Therefore, I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to our beloved Margie, Madam Ajit Kaur, for conducting the South Asian Online Literary Festival and for making us a part of it. I think we all are equally blessed, honored, and privileged to see each other, at least online, in a situation where the pandemic is devouring the world. Today, I am here with a renowned Sri Lankan scholar and a writer, Dr. Sunil Vijay Srivardhana. Dr. Sunil Vijay Srivardhana is a long-standing civic leader in Sri Lanka, committed to the cause of peace and democracy while being a researcher, teacher, and trainer with focus areas pertaining to cultural studies and transformative education. He was the founder director of the first independent cultural institute, Vibhavi Center for Alternative Culture, devoted to promote cultural rights, and to a cultural transformation program in Sri Lanka. As a playwright, a literary translator, a literary editor, and a critic, he has been making a notable contribution to fields of Sinhala literature and the theatre. At present, he serves as a visiting lecturer at University of Kelaniya and Sri Pali campus affiliated to Colombo University, where he contributed as the senior consultant to develop a new syllabus for the Performing Arts Department. He was one of the artists who initiated the 2015 civic movement to draft a national cultural policy for Sri Lanka and is currently joint chairperson of the Arts and Cultural Policy Desk, working towards creating a far-reaching and transformative national cultural policy for the country. So, Doctor, it's about you in very brief. I'd like to invite you to share more about yourself with us in detail, but in short again.
Actually, I'm so grateful and thankful to the Sahitya Akademi and the foundation of SAARC Literary Foundation Writers. And thank you also, Kanchana. Thank you so much, Madam Ajit Kaur. It's actually honor and privilege to participate in this August assembly of distinguished cultural leaders in the region. Well, to make it very short, that I'm a writer, a poet, yes, as she was mentioning, a playwright, literary translator, literary editor, critic. Some of the works that I have done as a literary person, one was perhaps, I'll just mention a few. There was one, a play called, or the libretto for the first Sinhala opera, done by Maestro Kemadas. It was sort of a huge success. It was called Manasavila. It was based on Buddhist tale. It's a very kind of, critical about our social context, and well, it's some parable about the society's political part. Then there was another epic play, which was called Ratnavalli. And it's also about the power politics of early formative period of historical state. And it was a very controversial play. Still people talk about it, and there's a lot of, well, good and bad kind of, negative and positive responses. But some of the best archaeologists and historians praised that play, and they recommended that universities for their students. And my Russian language is much more better, I guess, than my English. And I have been translating from Russian as well. And just a few months back, I was able to publish a big book of poetry, Russian poetry from Russian. It was actually featured Silver Age poetry, 5 some of the best poets I translated from Russian to Sinhala. Then there were translations also I've done from theater. For the theater, there was one big play by Bertolt Brecht, a famous play, Irresistible Rise of Arthur Uy into Sinhala, and it was at that time in 1994, it won all the state awards for the play. It was a huge sort of, it was much engaging with the current politics at that time. There were, I also did some Ibsen plays, few Ibsen plays. And apart from my literary work, literary things, I also have done some, initially, I also translated some academic stuff. One I did, I think it's a seminal book by Professor Glenn Page. The book is called Non-Killing Global Political Science. And interestingly, it's now translated into more than 40 languages. I was one of the first 3 people. I think I came before even Hindi translation, and he was amazed how I trace this book and think of, to translate that. And I also wrote some politico-cultural stuff and some books. Especially, I was looking at the culture. Perhaps I am the first person in Sri Lanka to come up with critical ideas of culture, looking at the culture as a site of struggle for better world, better, more humanistic social relationships and all. So there's, I wrote about that, the kind of, analytical stuff on how to understand culture. Not, we are, I can perhaps, talk about later, but to see culture as a site of struggle rather than a place to worship, because there are a lot of good and bad things about culture. When we say culture, we usually tend to separate culture from as a subject. But my now way of understanding is that I'm basing on what I call systems philosophy and looking at the this interplays, the powers and interplays which is in the society. So these are the things basically what I would say about myself as a writer. Thank you, Kanchana. Hello.
Kanchana, you please unmute your phone. Yeah. Please.
Okay. Then, thank you, Doctor. So, if we turn towards Vibhavi, the only alternative cultural center we had in Sri Lanka, functioned for around 10 years, contributed a lot to the Sri Lankan literature in many ways. So, shall we talk about that?
Yes, thank you. It's very pleasant memories about Vibhavi. We call it Vibhavi Center for Alternative Culture. And, I was in Russia for 10 years before the collapse of Soviet Union. And I did, it's a strange story of mine. I did a PhD in plant genetics. I did science. But I was very much, when I was in Moscow, I was very much into the arts and cultural scene of Moscow. I was part of the film club, Moscow Film Club. I had a lot of friends, poets, and many artists, young people at that time. It was a very intensive arts and cultural life through which I experienced. So after I came back to Sri Lanka, I found that, well, we have a very, sad kind of situation with regard to arts and cultural life in Sri Lanka. The institutions, state institutions were not, working the manner that really young people wanted. They were very traditional and very sort of, there's a lot of problematic issues with regard to state institutions. So then there was no idea about any rights of culture, right for cultural rights or right to culture. In the political discourse, we were talking only about the civil and political rights. So then I actually, with a group of friends, we have set up this institution called Vibhavi Center for Alternative Culture in 1991. Actually, it was the first alternative cultural institution in the country, and we were doing a lot of work in terms of arts and cultural education, literary seminars, theater festivals, film festivals, and due to our work, I think we have paved the way for emerging many arts groups and clubs all around the country. So there was kind of a movement of cultural movement because of the work of or thanks to the work of Vibhavi. So we set up at that time, and there was a lot of work that we have done. We had a good library, we had a good film library, and we established something called Independent Literary Festival. There was a state literary festival, and we were very unhappy about the status of this festival because it was not transparent. There were no reports. So we want to show the society how a festival should be. So we had a very strong panel of art academics and literary people, and the processes, the evaluation process for later, we used to publish them so people could engage and discuss and a debate on the votes and kind of so there was a lot of seminars around what we have been doing. Sometimes we ourselves have initiated, and sometimes people start to develop their own sort of spaces for discussion. So we had many small, as I was telling, many small clubs were emerging all over the country. So we have to go to even at the village level and support the people. So that was the times of Vibhavi. And I also, well, I may mention that because of my Vibhavi work, I also started, having a lot of contacts with India and the South Asian region. I was into, I was a partly cultural activist, but also social activist. I was believing in non-violent, transformative ideas, non-violent, social transformation ideas. I was trying to develop kind of theories for social, non-violent, peaceful social transformation. Still, I'm engaged with that. So there was once there was a process just before the dawn of the 21st century. There was regional process called PP21, People's Power for 21st Century. So I mean, a lot of very prominent people, cultural activists, social activists in the India and Nepal and in the region. So I met. Actually, I was working with some of them within this PP21 processes. I came to, I was Kamla Bashini was a good friend of mine who just a few days back, she passed away. And Smithu Kotari was a friend, and there were a lot of other people. Anand Patwardhan, we invited him to Sri Lanka to conduct some workshops for young people, filmmakers. So there were a lot of connection with India and the region also because of our work in Vibhavi. So I think we have done some work, and still the results are still, in the pipeline. Still we see that some of the prominent artists in the literature, in film, in theater, have been associating as when they were very young with the Vibhavi Center. So when you look back, I think this is one part of my life that I feel very happy about, and that's that. We don't have enough much time to go through, I think, all the Vibhavi experience, but still we are getting results because we were sowing seeds in Vibhavi times, and they are still, we see the harvests, good harvest. Thanks, Kanchana.
So, Doctor, it still seems like many Sri Lankans have an uneasy relationship with arts and culture.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so is it same with the entire world? Or is it just an issue we have here in Sri Lanka?
I would say it's a very sad thing to acknowledge. I feel with my work and with my research kind of, investigative work, I feel it's very peculiar to Sri Lankan people. We have, as you say, we have very uneasy, problematic relationship with arts. When you talk with the people, nobody would, thinks that we think that we love arts. But I think at the deep level, we don't understand the importance of arts in the society. Even in schools, still teachers, teachers say to their students, we do arts once we finish our important jobs. It's for leisure, it's for pleasure, like, it's sort of entertainment idea. But we don't feel that arts should be a priority of life. It's not just, to become a human. I sometimes drastically say that we are not born as humans. Well, when we born, we are not full humans, or rather, we are born with capacities to become human. So it's up to us, to be human. We have to earn our humanity. So arts and culture is an important aspect of this, our possibility to become humans. We are not, for instance, we are not born with languages, but we are born with the capacity to acquire languages. Likewise, for aesthetic pleasure, for aesthetic work, we are born with those lot of capacities, but are not. These capacities are not being flourished all the time. I mean, in a society, it's up to us and up to the society that we have made. It was not, I mean, it's not peculiar in not something genetical or something. It's a cultural issue. And in early history, or rather until 17th century, I would say, very good sort of situation with regard to arts and culture, the flourishing of culture. There was a lot of, we are proud of Buddhist arts in Sri Lanka, and there was a lot of things. I mean, we still love literature. That is a fact. But with regard to the performing arts and visual arts, we don't much about performing arts and visual arts. I have written about. I mean, there were some scholars trying to. Well, nobody actually has seen this. We were blind about the fact. But there was Professor Sarat Chandra, famous professor. He came through his field work and a lot of stuff. He began to see a problem. And then he wrote, he wrote a book, and he thought that the reason is our Buddhism. The Sri Lankan Buddhism has some kind of, attitude that prevents a good relationship with arts. So people perhaps seem to think that arts and performing arts is a kind of problem or blockade to the liberation, self-liberation, whatever, the nirvana, whatever. In my work, I think that this is not true. There were, I mean, in early times of Buddhism, the Buddhism itself has, promoted theater and literature, and there was no issue like that. But during the Kandyan period, which we call the Indian Kingdom, it's 16th or rather 17th, 18th century, the caste system solidified to the extent, and it's a huge issue, a peculiar caste system was solidified. And if I say that some of the stratas, they are so down at the social ladder, the people who practice arts, especially the performing arts, they were at the very lowest levels. And then with at that time, the Buddhism, the Kandyan Buddhism, what I call it, is the feudal Buddhism. Kandyan Buddhism was, since it is socially, seen as not good thing to practice for elite and upper caste people. And the problem in Sri Lanka is that 50% of the Govigama caste, that is peasantry, as seen as the upper caste. About a majority of people think that they are at the top level of the society, and they see that performing arts and arts are actually, other arts are actually lower levels in social terms. So yes. So there's a huge issue how the culture is formed. So caste produces its own culture, or gender produces its own culture. Class produces its own culture. The other dividing structures produce its own culture.
Sunilji, this subject wants a full-length discourse, but the time limit.
Yes, I know.
We are very thankful, Sunil Vijay Srivardhanaji and Kanchanaji, and I request Karma Cheki.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Kanchana. Thank you so much.
With Rinjan Sahab. With
yes, I know. 10 minutes.
Please. Yes, Karma, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Lord. So it is my greatest pleasure to extend greetings to all the people joining us, and on behalf and in behalf of our Chief Coordinator, Country Coordinator, Dr. Rinjan Brinsen, we would like to thank Sahitya Akademi and the Madam Ajit Kaur for this opportunity that we can meet and through online, even though it's very hard time to get together. So still then we are very grateful for this golden opportunity. So in the meantime, I would like to introduce our special guest. So I have Mr. Rinjan Brinsen. So I think most of us maybe knowing him through his name. So he is most prolific writers in our country, and so despite being a great writer, he is also a poet. He has written several poems and even published in international levels and other languages too. So it is our greatest pride to say that Mr. Rinjan has been the greatest part of our literature in the country. So to introduce, to talk something about his artistic process. So as a writer, he has published 2 novels as of now, and 4 children's book, and even his story from his first book has been made into a local feature film. And even the education system in the country, Ministry of Education in the country has chosen his story, one of the stories for the education. They have implemented the story, used it in the curriculum for the students. And so his books and his writings have had a tremendous impact on a lot of people, aspiring writers, for the balance personal and the personal lives. So on that note, I'm very excited to interview Dr. Rinjan with some of the questions. Few are based on his book, and then some questions are open-ended so that we can have some fun with the questions that I'm going to interact with him.
Thank you, Karma, for a very colorful, highly undeserved introduction. On the onset, I would like to convey love and greetings from Bhutan to everyone at FOSWAL, especially my Ajit Kaur ji and everybody at Sahitya and the participating eminent writers, scholars from Maldives and Sri Lanka. Thank you so much for having us. Karma, it's up to you, all of you now.
Thank you, La. So to start with our question, La. So for Doctor, I have the first very question is, what was the most difficult part of your artistic process while writing your second book, the Depa Bongdepa? So the Depa Bongdepa is basically the book based on the culture, tradition, and myth. So what was your most difficult part while writing that second book, La?
Actually, just constant of time, because that time was 2016 when I had just completed 3 additional years of college life, and then I was planning to do another collection of short stories. However, I shared this story, which is a legend actually. It was 1.5 pages only. I shared this with Chador Wangmo, my very close friend and a prominent Bhutanese writer, and she said, well, this story should not be in a collection of short stories book. You know, this deserves a book of its own. So she was saying, like, can you do that? I said yes, and then we thought we'll make some history because there are not too many writers in Bhutan. So for the first time, Chadorangmo had already written her La Ama, her novel, and then Lingi Jamso had completed his Gelo, and then they wanted me to join in launching three books at a time. So it was quite historic for Bhutan. It hardly happens here. So it was sponsored by La Meradin Riverfront in Paro. So then I just had 1.5 pages of my story. But I must say, like, honestly, I did that book in 5 days. And Chador Wangmo told me never to share this with others. Now it's an international, I mean, everybody knows it. So actually, I had no problem because I had the story, characters, everything working in my head for a long time. So all I needed was 5 days to write it.
Oh, wow, that was a very great experience, Doctor had. And then it's a very interesting idea that we should take it. It means that we are not supposed to keep that 1.5 page story like that. So it means that we have a chance to extend it and make it even further published into a book. So thank you so much. So to proceed further, so the next question is, do you hide any kind of secret in your works that other people will find, or it can be in any kind of literature? Do you keep any secrets that only you can find?
Only a smart upcoming writer like you can ask such a question. By the way, Karma Choki is the author of A Miracle One Day, a very popular book here, and she's right now undergoing her postgraduate diploma in education. She's going to become a teacher soon. Hide secrets. Yes, I do it quite often. Especially, I did it a lot while doing my first book, The Talisman of Good Fortune, and other stories. And I never share. I never explain to my readers, where the secrets are hidden, and only a few, like you have imagined, only few are able to really unlock those secrets, and I really enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I would like to sit with you and then wanted to know your secrets later on.
Sure, Karma, sure.
So the third question here is, what was your experience and where did you learn that the language had a power to express your writings?
Oh, ever since I was in high school, I was so taken, like fascinated by all those writers. I used to read pocket books ever since I was in grade 4. So I was, sometimes you're reading a fiction book and the writer does it such a way that you start believing and you become the protagonist or the antagonist in that story. And then later I also learned that the more power you have about power of language, I mean, you have access to the whole world. You tend to understand a lot of things much better, and even in your academics, you do much better. Honestly, I was fairly okay with English and also the national language. I never had to study English as English. It just came, and even the national language, and even the understanding, the problem-solving questions in mathematics, for instance. My goodness, if you have the power of language, you can do anything.
Wow, that was a very informative idea. So no wonder that you are a great writer, but you are also a very impressive poet. So regarding the poem, when do you write a poem? So do you hear what the sounds you hear in your head? Or do you simply write just stating it something? Or do you have a certain hidden idea that you hear what sounds you write what sounds in your head?
Oh, I feel it. First, I feel it. Then I hear it, and then I write it the way I feel and hear it. It's just that my writing is not up to the mark, and especially when I recite a poem, I'm not very good at it.
Thank you. So it doesn't mean that you should be at the mark of reciting a poem or what, but I need that I am, as an aspiring writer, I keep on learning from you all, so that the most important thing is the expression. The way you express is very important, and then I learn from you all. Thank you. So the last question here is for the aspiring writers like I, and so other upcoming writers. So what is your advice, or what could be the advice you had given to you when you were a young writer?
For myself, I have 7 rules, and I'll share it with others. Number 1 is read. Number 2 is listen carefully. Number 2, observe everything. Observe everything. Number 4, process your thoughts. Think,
Wow.
and meditate on it. Number 5, always consult others. Talk with others. Listen to others. It's always good to be in conversation with others. You learn a lot from you can learn anything a lot from everybody else. And 6th one is then start writing. The 7th one is never throw away whatever you have written. I have thrown away many things. Maybe I might have thrown away masterpieces. I'm just kidding. But never throw away what you write today. Because one day, my experience is that one day, you go back and read what you write. Often you think, oh, that's rubbish, and then you throw it away. But sometimes you think, wow, did I really write that? Now that is yeah. So the moment is very important. Capture it, and preserve it, and then look back at it someday. I think this is all the time we have. Thank you so much for your beautiful questions, Karma. It's nice to see you virtually, though, after a long time. And all the friends from Sahitya Akademi, Ma Ajit Kaur, and everybody at FOSWAL, and very eminent writers, scholars from Maldives and Sri Lanka. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinjanji. Thank you, Karmaji. Thanks. We have got a chance to know about your creativity and the speciality of your writing and the other co-writers of your time and the many art scenario, the current art scenario also. We are very thankful from Sahitya Academy and FOSWAL to all of you. Thanks.
Can I have 2 seconds?
Yeah, please.
Today is the National Day of the Maldives, which we're celebrating. So National Day greetings from the Maldives to all of you. And thank you for being part of that.
Many greetings. Many greetings.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.